Hello, everyone. Today we have Therese Gamble from Jacksonville, Florida. She will be sharing some of her startup community ideas, and we also have George today, who will start off by giving us who will present the global markets update across all asset classes. And just to let you know a little bit more about George. George is a turnaround and crisis management expert with expertise in behavioral finance and corporate re-engineering who has advised governments, financial institutions, colleges, and universities in various large and small enterprises in the US, Europe, and emerging markets. And could you give us an introduction, Therese?
Sure, no problem, Maria. My name is Therese Gamble. I am a native of Jacksonville, Florida, born and raised. I live in the urban core of I was born and raised in the urban core of Jacksonville in the most work productive African-American community right down the street from historical Black college, Edward Waters College. I am a wife this July 22nd of 32 years. I am a mother of 2 sons and daughter-in-laws, and I have 1 5-year-old grandson. I am the founder and CEO of Concierge Resource Professional Consultants. We are an award-winning management consulting firm where we help with consulting, coaching, connection, and collaboration in communication for entrepreneurs at any phase of the business cycle. And our goal is to help them create or repair their processes and their systems for sustainable revenue streams in multiple markets. So right now, and also being a rookie chapter director of Startup Grind, I just became a director in March of 2019. So I have reached my year. I am so excited about it. Had an amazing opportunity early February to be a stage manager and a MC in the marketing stage room, where that encountered almost 10,000 conference attendees for 2 days. So I have an amazing relationship building in Jacksonville, Florida, locally, and now Startup Grind has given me this opportunity to have a global relationship. Thank you so much for having me today. I can't wait to have the conversation.
Yes, we are very excited to host you. Later on, Therese will give us some insight on how the epidemic is affecting the startup and entrepreneurial ecosystem in her region, as well as provide advice to entrepreneurs at the event. But to start off, we're going to have George kick off with the markets.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Teresa. Welcome to Real Talk. As we normally do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we start with a quick snapshot of what is happening in the financial markets. As we have seen over the last several weeks, the dollar is trading within a range between 111 and 114 against the euro and most other currencies in a similar fashion. We have seen that the risk on, risk off trade is determining essentially which way the dollar trades within a given day or a given week. And the most important aspect to remember here is that the currencies, especially dollar euro, dollar yen, dollar Swiss, dollar sterling, are the currency pairs tell us in which way investors tend to be investing. What we mean by that is that when the dollar strengthens, we have a flight to security, a flight to safety. And most of our investors and most of our entrepreneurs by now are familiar with this trend, that from all the global economy, the US seems to be the most robust for the time being. Of course, the Federal Reserve has done an exceptional job in managing the risk, and the support mechanism issued so far by the Congress has been positive. In other words, the stimulus package has been very, very well received. So against this background, we then move into bonds. The bond market is a far more conservative market. Bond investors care very much about the return of the capital. They tend to be risk averse and bond investors. When they see that the stimulus package is coming to an end, when they see that the Federal Reserve issued guidance to the banks to stop share buybacks, for instance, 2 weeks ago, bond investors tend to be skeptical about the recovery process. And these investors are, for the most part, investing in fixed income instruments, as we call them, the bond. The bond market in Asia has barely moved from Wednesday. Japan remains anchored at 0%, Australia 0.85. We mentioned before that both Japan and Australia have policies of yield control. In other words, they have policies that target specific yields in specific maturity bonds. Korea remains at 1.4%, India well under 6%. In Europe, we've seen small changes in the yields. Germany is still hovering around 0.5, Switzerland 0.5. This is negative yields. To us here in the US, this is unprecedented and very unusual. Why would investors pay the government for their money? And the answer is for security reasons. Here in the Americas, the snapshot is very clear. Finally, the US 10-year is trading exactly at 0.6. The market has been concerned. We saw a sell-off yesterday, and a sell-off in equities, that is. Canada is at 0.5, Brazil 6.5%, and Mexico well under 6%. In the commodities, the story yesterday and to some extent today has been what we call the energy complex, particularly the oil and gas. We've seen that West Texas Intermediate, after hitting about $40, $41, is now trading below 40. The sell-off yesterday in crude was anchored on fears that the supply will the excess supply of crude will stay with us for some time. Fears about lower global growth seem to suggest that oil will remain soft. However, having said that, we've seen that oil is recovering. The Brent is closer to $43 a barrel. Natural gas, again, $1.8 per thousand BTUs. The natural gas story is summer consumption of energy for air conditioning. When we look into the precious metals, the gold rally has continued. Gold is trading about $1,800 per ounce. The reason is twofold. One, inflationary fears, and two, fears of debasement of global currencies. In other words, as the global central banks are issuing more money, investors are afraid that this excess supply of money will actually debase the currencies, debase the dollar, debase the euro, debase sterling, and so on and so forth. And that's why these investors, who are very conservative by nature, have flocked into gold. On the other hand, look at copper. As we always mention in our Real Talk, copper is a substitute for global manufacturing. When you see that the copper price is close to $300 per pound, you're beginning to realize that the manufacturing engine in China, in Southeast Asia, is moving rapidly. And that's why copper has increased. We continue to expect stronger copper prices. On the agricultural front, we had a beautiful rain last night here in the Midwest. The humidity on the ground is ample. Today at 11 o'clock Central Time, we expect the United States Department of Agriculture to publish reports about crop production across the grains and cotton. So for the most part, we expect another bumper year for our corn, our grains, our soybeans, and our wheat. We also noted yesterday that the Ministry of Agriculture of China is trying to comply with phase one agreement with the US and buy some more soybeans, wheat, and corn. Well, let's see how this goes. Politics between the US and China will determine the prices of the grains moving forward. And many educated investors on the grain side suggest caution as rallies may not last very long. Last but not least, we look at the equities markets, and what we see in the equities markets is green across the board in um, Europe. Here we are. Asia this morning closed down, and the reason Asia closed down was, as you can see, Karachi was 0.13% up, Bombay Stock Index down 0.4, the Nifty 50 in India down 0.4, the Korean index was 0.8 down, Singapore Straits were down 112, Taiwan weighted down almost 1%, the Hang Seng down almost 2%, the Dow Jones Shanghai was down 2.5%. Nikkei was down 1%. We're seeing some form of positive thinking in Europe a little bit. As you can see, European markets are trading on the positive side. And the reason for this is that the stimulus from the European Central Bank is continuing to flow. Similar reaction we have in the equities markets here in the US, with the exception of Nasdaq, that is down 0.4%. The S&P is trading water, relatively unchanged from yesterday's close. The Dow is up 0.3%. Again, the markets will benefit from liquidity coming from the central banks, and this is going to be seen first and foremost in the equities market. So again, this background, we always repeat to our entrepreneurs and investors, be very cautious about the financial decisions you make. That's the first point. The second point is the reason we start by reviewing the financial markets is not to tell you what to trade, how to trade, but to show you the signals of news, of information that each one of these markets tell us. Last but not least, we will be heading soon into the earnings season. You'll be listening to CEOs' announcements about the performance of the companies. It is going to be extremely important. The second quarter, we know, has been the most difficult quarter for the banks since the 2008-2009 crisis. Entrepreneurs, investors, keep your ears out. We're going to see and learn a lot from this yo-yo, open, close kind of economy globally. Again, past performance is not a good indication about future performance. If you feel like trading based on real talk, please go and see a psychologist. Do not trade. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, George. As Corey has mentioned before, no one has a crystal ball, but the markets operate virtually 24 hours and across the globe. As markets open and close, and as their outcomes across all asset classes inform the decisions of every entrepreneur on the ground, we can at least see around the bend and do our very best to make the best decisions we can for our businesses, teams, and families. And now to Therese. Hi, Therese. I wanted to start off with, what are some individual startup grind entrepreneurs within your community?
We have amazing entrepreneurs and startups in our community. Jacksonville is basically moving heavily into the fintech space. They have been playing with this idea since early 2019, and they have actually had an accelerator contest, looking for the best and brightest in blockchain technology, cryptocurrency. Our Chamber of Commerce and leadership team, board of directors, they're getting ready late September to take a trip to Louisville, St. Louis, Missouri, to study the fintech industry, to bring it more relevant and to the startup grind community. The next industry, we're big and heavy in healthcare, military, service industries. We have manufacturing and production industries, like with the airlines and with the waterfront, with the transportation and logistics. By the way, my father was a longshoreman for almost 50 years. So I basically grew up on the waterfront, going back and forth with him. So right now with the pandemic, a lot of the startups have been struggling, trying to pivot from business as usual to the virtual space. And I have been really, trying to encourage doing lives off the Startup Grind platform, providing motivational and nuggets for them. So some of the startups that I know personally is mainly the food industries. I've been working with a lot of the food industries and the restaurants because they took the biggest hit, not being an actual essential worker. It's helping them use the employees that they have and start doing a delivery service like Domino's or like the pizza companies. So that way they can keep their employees employed and yet be able to deliver food to their customer base so they don't lose any traction. The next level of startups that Startup Grind community in Jacksonville deal with is the nonprofit faith-based organization that deal with the social aspect of our community because of the protesting from George Floyd's murder in May. And it's been really hard hitting in Jacksonville because we deal with the same systemic issues and have been for a very, very long time. So a lot of the nonprofit organizations have been helping by means of those that protest and get arrested. They've been putting up bond money. So I've been helping them with fundraising, you know, with their crowdfunding campaigns, connecting them to investors who support the Black Lives Matter initiative so they can help get those individuals bailed out of jail. The other thing is that I've been doing, even as a consultant, is helping those experts who have intellectual knowledge to be able to pivot to a digital space. Many of them don't have the confidence to do what we're doing right now, is do a video, do it live. They don't have the confidence of being able to think that their message is going to reach anyone. But what I do is motivate and encourage them, and I do it by modeling. I do it myself. Whether I have an attendee or not, Maria, I still put the content out there because you never know who's going to watch the replay later. So that's pretty much the space that what Startup Grind is pivoting to, as well as incorporating the Startup Grind membership program more than ever. So maybe I may not have all the answers that they need, and I don't profess to, but I always direct them and point them to resources like the Startup Grind membership program so they can be able to get all the amazing help, the hackathon, the growth hackathon experiences to really flesh out their minimum value product that they're trying to pivot into.
Thank you. And with those startup members, are there any individual investors that usually are willing to help these new entrepreneurs?
Right now, everything lately, before the Republican National Committee decided to be hosted in Jacksonville, Florida, they were very quiet. Many of them was trying to pivot and were looking for startups, you know, who are struggling, especially people of color because of the protesting. And we're seeing a lot of those companies who are changing their messaging, changing their stance, and beginning to invest dollars. So now with the Republican National Convention coming to Jacksonville, August 24th through the 27th, those investors are coming out to help those small businesses and startups to be able to showcase their business, their product, their services, to help them with the economic loss they suffered during the pandemic since early March.
Are there any women-founded or even Black-founded startups within the Jacksonville community?
Oh, it's plenty. To be honest, I did the statistics for my chapter for attendees last year. 78%, almost 80% of my attendees were women, and most of them were women of color. They in different industries, from food service, fashion design, healthcare, fitness. So yes, it's a multiple, almost about 82% women of color founders in Jacksonville, and many of them specialize in more than one industry.
Do you have any questions, George?
I think he's muted.
Yeah, I think you're still on mute.
Yes, first of all, thank you for this detailed introduction, Therese.
Thank you.
In Jacksonville, clearly you have the hospitality and entertainment industries broadly defined being important, but you also have agriculture and universities and also banking.
Right.
What are the main areas in which your startup community is engaged?
My startup community is engaged. I just recently reconnected with an old college alumni. She started a Facebook group called Duval Dines, almost like diners, drives, and dives on Food Network. And me and her, she has showcased those minority-owned restaurants in Jacksonville. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, let's look at the farmers in our community to be able to connect with these restaurants, to be able to provide fresh foods for those who are changing their diet or changing their lifestyle. So me and her right now, we have connected with 4 women of color who run actual farms in Jacksonville to help push their product out so they don't have to destroy the product like a lot of the farmers have been doing around the country, like dumping milk and destroying crops. So we're reaching out to those farmers in Northeast Florida, which consists of 5 counties in around Jacksonville, to make sure they repurpose their food and push it out, not just through food banks, but to the restaurants, to those Instacart, to deliver fresh produce to those who are staying sheltered and staying in place. So it's very prevalent, and it's amazing you asked me about agriculture because both of my parents grew up on farms. So when my mother was living at home before she went to a nurse home, she always had a garden in the yard. So it is very strong, prevalent. A lot of them can't do the street sales no more. So we're helping them with this platform, me and my alumni friend, to be able to push them in relationships with restaurants and to food banks and churches who are servicing the community. The banking industry has been real creative. They've been helping the city of Jacksonville, who have been providing small business and individual emergency assistance, and they've been using moving to debit cards or to be able to push the funds out to the community members faster, as well as the SNAP benefits for purchasing of food. They pushing everything through the debit cards so they don't have to get a paper check, try to go to the bank to cash the check. Even with my husband being on workman's comp, most of the workman's comp payments are paper check. We convinced them to go direct deposit, so he wouldn't have to come out and have to try to social distance, protect himself so he don't contract the virus. So he's able to get funds direct deposit, be able to pay and do business online and still stay safe.
It's really wonderful that you're able to tap into these resources and find innovative solutions. What we have noticed throughout our Real Talk conversations, Therese, is that the startup grind directors provide leadership in both thinking, but also in bringing together different parts of the ecosystem.
Right.
Can you please describe to us a little bit the structure of the ecosystem? In other words, do you have access to angel investors? Do you have access to local VCs? Or do you, is your local, so to speak, ecosystem Jacksonville only based, or do you have access also to Miami, to the Atlantic coast, for instance, and or the Gulf of Mexico areas in terms of entrepreneurs and investors?
That's a great question, George. And yes, Jacksonville does. We lately, before when I became chapter director, we started beginning to see the rise of new investors coming into town, especially in that fintech space, to be able to. We've learned that we're being branded as the second Silicon Valley in Jacksonville, Florida, because of the innovation. There's no state taxes. It's only local taxes. So they're not, corporation is not overly stressed with paying all these fees. So to get in touch with angel investors, venture capitalists, the first funnel is through our Chamber of Commerce, because most of them are your trustee members. They, such as Amazon, they have put 3 facilities in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is one county, which is Duval, but we are considered a region, which is Northeast Florida. So there's 4 other counties that surrounds Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville has the largest land mass. Jacksonville has the largest population, but those people that live on the outskirts say Clay County, which is Orange Park, Florida. St. Augustine, Florida, which is in St. Johns County. And then you have Fernandina Beach, and then you have Baker County. Those counties those individuals may live there, but they work and do business and play in Jacksonville. So yes, we have an extended reach of investors in all those regions. And yes, we have investors down south throughout the state, because many of them may have corporate offices, say in Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Orlando, but they may have a satellite office or an affiliate in Jacksonville because of the NFL team with the Jaguars and Sean Khan. Because Sean Khan is not just an NFL owner, he's also an entrepreneur as well, and have several investments that he has made in small businesses in Jacksonville. One of them was a bakery. Another one is he's getting into the entertainment circuit, like you mentioned earlier. Him and his brother, they are owners of AEW, the wrestling network. So there is opportunities for it. It's just putting yourself in positioning to pitch it. And that's one of the things I focus with my chapter, is helping startups build that confidence to be able to communicate who they are, the value they provide, their traction, and how they're even pivoting in this pandemic to still stay sustainable and relevant.
That's impressive. It is really, really impressive, Therese, that you're able to leverage the resources of successful entrepreneurs. I assume they not only invest their capital, they invest their time, they give them mentorships and so on and so forth, correct?
Yes. Because some of them, they don't all give money, but they give advisement. And I have brought them on as a chapter to be advisors, to be mentors. Sometimes I have them come give me like pre-recorded nuggets, pretty much like how you do the market update. They will give me like nuggets to share within the community in my announcements when I do events, to let them know, okay, startups in the Northeast Florida area, you may want to pay attention to this. You may want to look out for this. This is, look who's rolling out some new products and services to help you throughout the pandemic. And then we do co-branding together. So I will put them in the newsletter. I will feature them on the chapter directory page, and they would do vice versa for me and refer business owners that they work with to come to the chapter to get the education and the connection and inspiration that they need.
That's really impressive. Wonderful. Thank you for that. One more question on my side, and then I'll pass you on to Maria.
Sure.
When we talk to startup directors again around the world, we see that very frequently, because of financial conditions, but also because of the maturity of the local communities, the first money for a startup comes from friends and family. If we had, if Maria, Corey, and I came to Jacksonville and we wanted to start a business there, where would we raise our first capital?
Crowdfunding is very popular in Jacksonville, Florida, and as well as this organization is called LISC, L-I-S-C, and they're a national organization where they help in urban communities. Right now, the focus has been, because of not just the pandemic, but the protesting, the focus has really been in urban core or people of color communities. That would be your African Americans, your Latinos, your Hispanics, the Mexicans, the Africans, the Colombians, to try to provide resources for those who are bootstrapping, because most of my chapter members, they bootstrap. Only 10% are actually successful to get an angel investor or a VC to help them launch. So a lot of it is bootstrapping. A lot of them liquidate in 401ks, cashing in stocks. So what I would suggest for you all, because Jacksonville is such a service industry, is to find something that's gonna make life much easier and provide education with it and access. That's the key thing. You will need to have a business model that will provide your consumers to have access at their level. So I will highly recommend right now, and what I'm pivoting to is the unemployment situation for the displaced workers who are working for a non-essential business, that's your recreational or businesses. And then helping those employers who are essential businesses who have job vacancies to make sure they get the right fit. So because their business strategy is shifting in order for them to continue to receive the business results. In order to get the business results they need, you have to fix your people strategy. So that will be my recommendation if you want to launch a business in Jacksonville, is to help with the people strategy. And that's a corporate and social responsibility. And once we get that right, then it'll be a win-win for everybody.
You have touched on some very important issues here, Therese.
Yes.
It's really wonderful because, if anything, this pandemic underlines the fact that the community is becoming important again, and it
Yes.
has always been. We
Yes.
know that it takes a village to raise a child, and now we're forming the village once again.
That is
Uh,
so true.
and your concept and your focus on re-education, retraining, reskilling at this difficult time, I think is very, very appropriate. Talking of which, you mentioned fintech being a sector that has grown quite a bit in Jacksonville. Is edtech also?
Yes, it is. To be honest, they marrying the two. There is recently the University of North Florida actually had a cybersecurity boot camp because of the shortage of cybersecurity experts that's needed because everybody's online virtually to help preventing hacking of personal identification. Recently, like with Zoom, they were Zoom bombing people's sessions and stuff, and Zoom bombing the students who are learning from home on technology. So the University of North Florida is partnering with this tech company to be able to train individuals for that space. And then Global Accelerated Ventures, they came to Jacksonville January and they hosted the FinTech Innovative Challenge. That way to pull those different startups out to see in blockchain, banking innovation, payment innovation, process automation, and data analytics. So on a personal note, I'm getting ready to go back to school myself to get a doctorate in financial management so I want to be more proficient in this fintech space because that's where we're moving to. And I feel once I become equipped and knowledgeable with it and engage with the right people in that industry, I can bring more value to Startup Grind Jacksonville chapter and my brother and sister chapters as well as my business.
Thank you for sharing, Therese. That is great. I love how you focused on the people of color community. And then I'm really happy for you in wanting to pursue a doctorate degree in financial management. I also saw that you are holding a virtual chat on Sunday, July 12th.
Yes.
What do you plan to get out of that? What do you want to bring to people's awareness?
The chat on Sunday is amazing. That is with the Bakken chapter of Startup Grind and their sister company Scaling. They were seeing all the social unrest that was going on in the United States. And because they were not they did not look like a person of color. Their community is all one landscape. They wanted to do something to help support women of color. And in order to do that, they wanted to recruit equality ambassadors. So I will be the first equality ambassador this Sunday speaking, sharing my story of racism and discrimination that I have experienced growing up as a woman of color. My parents marched with Dr. Martin Luther King when I was much younger when he came to Jacksonville. So my parents were very strong community advocates. I am a third generation preacher's daughter. So church, politics, it was education, entrepreneurship is all rolled into one. So this platform Sunday will be sharing a vulnerable side that I have never shared. And I'm doing it globally, which kind of scaring me, but I know the message need to be heard because in order for other cultures to understand why it was such a social unrest with George Floyd death for suffering for 401 years, once you understand, then you'll know how to support. Not just our holiday, Juneteenth, not just playing to lift every voice and sing national anthem, not just, saying, celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Day. We need more than that. We need allies to help change policy and legislation globally so everyone is truly created equal. Even though we was not at the table when the Declaration of Independence was signed, we have the opportunity now to make the change so my 5-year-old grandson won't have to deal with this when he becomes 18.
I love that. Tell us a little bit about how CRPC Consulting relates to this event that you're holding and the startup community.
CRPC consultant was actually birthed as part of my vulnerability story. It was due to health challenges. I was what you would call those super women professionals. I was shooting and striving for the glass ceiling, being in management, being a VP of a major corporation in Jacksonville. During that time, I was in the healthcare industry where I processed claims, and then I moved to the state level, working in the unemployment office, making sure individuals get their benefits. But my health took a major toll, and it shut me down almost a whole month from work. And when that happened, I didn't know it was no cure. So when you get diagnosed with a disease or illness and there's no cure, what do you do? When you're holding a graduate degree and you're a 2-income family. So during that time, I was on my back on the bed, suffering from vertigo. My faith is very strong. I prayed. I said, okay, how can I take all this expertise, this knowledge that I have learned in corporate America to help monetize, to help support my husband? And that's when Concierge Resource Professionals were birthed in 2015. So all the skill sets and relationships I had built over the years, because I started working at 16. This happened when I was 43. This November, I will be 50. So I took that experience that I've learned in education and launched my business to help entrepreneurs organize themselves, present themselves a good front, prepare them to be able to be effectively engaged with customers and third-party vendors, and then be able to pitch to angel investors and VCs to get funding when they want to launch a new product, or they want to pivot, or they want to partner, or they want to embrace into a new market. That is goal. So CRPC mantra basically is getting access or unearthing hidden gems that people would normally know about. And from there, everything I was doing in CRPC, startup grind, mission, and values, implement that. So it was a perfect coupling, because my tagline for CRPC is B2B strategic engagement experts, the nation's only one. So, and I'm proud for that label, and I wear it well, because I recently did an audit. My entrepreneur impact is almost over 3 million with Startup Grind affiliate in my network.
That is amazing.
Yes.
I am very, very happy for you and very proud for what you have done within your community. It seems that you have a great sense of leadership. What do you think is the best advice that you could give to someone who is listening to us or who will listen to our replay?
Awesome. I'm glad you asked, Maria. The best advice I can give a person is the 4 P's that I have been practicing all my life: people, processes, plan, pivot. You in that order, because there are things that you're going to encounter, whether you're an individual. It doesn't matter what age you are, whether you are married, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a grandparent, whether you're an aunt, uncle, or niece. They think pivots is going to happen in your personal life, your professional life, and most definitely in your entrepreneurial life. And if you have a partner, make sure you include your partner in your passion. When you include your partner, then they can understand your vision. They can understand why you stay up late at night. They can understand why, you got to work on this project and you have to disconnect from the world. So because you're trying to be the first to solve problems. And that's the next thing. Make sure you're solving problems that people need solving, but don't stop there. Because once you solve that problem, something else is going to spin off from it. So always stay open, love your passion, what you do. Don't do anything you don't do. But if you have to do something you don't do, that you love to do, make sure you make impact with it, that your absence is felt once you complete it.
It seems George had a question.
Yes.
We're wondering, what do you think the next normal would be after this pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, after all these, there has been multiple events happening just in the beginning 6 months of the year. How will you think that will change what we consider normal?
Right now, I think all of us is on what I call the Cliff Notes fast track of trying to get a plan in place. This is not the season of procrastination or reactiveness. I mean, that went down the toilet in early February, really November, when this pandemic came to life. I was strongly, right now, I see our new normal. There's going to be a lot of virtual activity. Even in the state of Florida, the Department of Education is pushing, trying to get children back in the classroom in the fall. And I am really scared for that, because the schools in Jacksonville, Florida are so old. They need that funding to upgrade the infrastructure itself. They're talking about getting these positions. I mean, parents are freaking out. So my thing is, first of all, you need to make health is the #1 priority. That means you may have to change your lifestyle, how you eat, because certain foods will trigger certain illnesses. Making sure you wear your mask. Don't worry about how you look. You wearing the mask not just to protect yourself, but to protect your community. Wear gloves. Make sure you're sanitizing everything. So yes, George, you have to be able to make sure you got this plan in place. And I'm gonna be to the point, the banner you see behind me, I'm getting ready to get a banner made to put by my front door. So if I have to go out, I have a visual checklist of what I need to do before I go outside my home to protect myself and my community. That's every person needs to have a pandemic pivot plan by the door when you go outside. And then when you come back home, what you need to do. But for us doing business, we have tech online. You can be able to do business online, but make sure you making the revenue so you can be able to stay sustainable. So I'm just telling everybody, you got to get on the fast track on the Cliff Notes, learn as much as you can to be able to substitute what you used to do to something very much, much new. And that is our new norm.
I love the way you put that together. Just to wrap things up, how can we help each other as a startup community?
Oh, it's so much we can do. I know for me in Jacksonville, I am getting ready to launch in the fall. I know we're doing the pitch battle in August. So right now I'm reaching out to Global Accelerated Ventures. I want to reach out to some angel investors, some venture capitalists, to not just be virtual judges, but to actually be keynote speakers, to or either host in a group ask me anything session for those startups in our community who have questions on what would an investor look for to support a small business right now who could not get the SBA PPP funding, because that deadline is coming September 30th, where it's going to be the cutoff. And that thing will be is say for in Michigan to find out what industries or what spaces your startup communities want to gravitate to that's very dominant in my community in Jacksonville. Say it's fintech or healthcare, customer service, or manufacturing, Amazon selling. One of my keynote speakers in Jacksonville, she's a 6-figure Amazon seller. So she has some coaching and training and things that she do for those that want to do business anywhere with Amazon. So that's how I can feel we can partner with education, and then referring experts, referring funders, referring opportunities for businesses to pitch who may want to do business in Michigan, and those who in Michigan want to do business in Florida.
Thank you. Well, just to wrap things up, I just want to point out that this pandemic has been and will continue to be the great global leveler.
Yes.
It has done a lot globally for everyone. It has changed the way we live, the way we talk to people, the way we approach people, the way we do business. And I think that there is a lot to learn, of course, in order to get through this successfully as a global community, because it's not just affecting the U.S., it's affecting every single one.
Yes.
Every single country. So I think that you gave some great advice for us today, and please share with us how we can join your event on Sunday so we can continue to learn and grow more from about the community, your community, and the people of color community, so that we can also be educated in that way. So yeah, how can we join you on Sunday?
Awesome. Thank you, Marie. The event is already live on Facebook events for the topic we're going to be talking about, which is a book that I'm writing of dealing with the cultural conversation. Is catered to excel, neglected to fail. Catered to excels represents when those men gathered together to write the Constitution on 1776. All of those men at that table were white privilege. There was not a person of color at the table. So we was not even acknowledged in the Constitution, only as 3/5 of a man. That is what catered to excel looks like. Neglected to fail would be the people of color. They prevent us from having access to housing, funding, banking, credit, being able to do the things that white privilege Americans and conservatives have had the privilege and benefits of doing, despite this country was built on the backs of Black America. That is the neglected to fail part. So in that retrospect, I will share my own personal experiences from growing up in the city when my parents was raised in low rural country and moving to a city, what the discrimination looked like. You will learn how, even though I stayed in a urban core community, I was bused over 40 miles away from my home to go to a predominantly white privileged school. And my mother didn't have a car. So just imagine if I was to get sick, how would she get to me? That means I would have had to trust a white privileged nurse to cater to my healthcare needs because my mother couldn't get to me. So those are some of the things that I'm gonna share, and that's the topic. But the event is already up and live on Facebook on the Startup Grind Jacksonville chapter and the Startup Grind Bakken chapter, as well as Scale Link as the sister company that is driving this event of launching equality ambassadors. And it's not just for women to attend. All genders can attend because we need to learn. Our story is not written in history books, Maria. So we have to keep doing the storytelling so people can understand why the social unrest and Black Lives Matter and people of color and races and gender is in an outrage. And so you can be able to understand the struggle and then listen for the solutions. Well, we need allies to help pass, change, alter policy and legislation. And even that means unseating certain politicians who harm people of color and put people in position who will help people of color.
Thank you for sharing. It was really nice having you, Therese.
Thank you so much.
Feel free to join us Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at the same time. We will continue with the podcast for as long as we can, and we'll continue to host other Startup Grind chapter members or directors, and feel free to join us whenever you'd like. It's the same link, Zoom link that I sent you, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Great. Thank you so much. I will stay connected. Enjoy you, and you do the same.
Thank you.